You think you know someone's worth by looking at them? Think again. What happens when a man humiliates his pregnant ex-wife on the street, splashing mud on her, throwing trash at her, laughing as she stands there helpless? He thinks he's untouchable. He thinks she's still that broken woman he discarded like garbage. But here's what he doesn't know. She's not alone anymore. She's not powerless. And the quiet man she married, he's not just any husband. This is a story about karma, justice, and what happens when you underestimate someone just because they chose kindness over cruelty. Before we dive in, smash that like button and subscribe, because this story will leave you speechless. Let's begin. She thought the worst day of her life was when he threw her out for being barren, until he splashed mud on her pregnant body and laughed. 11 years. 11 long years Sarah had given to a marriage that slowly suffocated her dreams. She had worked double shifts, pulling connections, whispering into the right ears until her husband Daniel finally landed that corporate position he'd always wanted. She cooked his meals, ironed his shirts, and endured the silent accusations at every family gathering. "Still no child, Sarah?" The words cut deeper each time. Daniel's mother would shake her head with that pitying look, while his sisters whispered in corners. Sarah became a ghost in her own home, invisible, inadequate, unwanted. Then came the meeting. Daniel sat her down with his entire family present, their faces already made up with decision. His mother spoke first. "We've found Daniel a woman who can give him children. You understand, don't you?" Sarah's hands trembled in her lap. She looked at Daniel, the man she'd sacrificed everything for, waiting for him to defend her, to remember all she'd done. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Pack your things," he said quietly. "I've already signed the papers." She left with one suitcase and a shattered heart, moving into a tiny apartment where the walls seemed to mock her with their emptiness. Months crawled by in painful silence. But Sarah refused to disappear. She found a nursing position at the community hospital, pouring her wounded heart into caring for others. She didn't know that fate was preparing the most unexpected chapter of her life. What happened next would make her ex-husband wish he'd treated her like the queen she always was. The man in the hospital corridor didn't wear a uniform that day, but something about the way he carried himself made everyone step aside. 3 months into her new life, Sarah found rhythm in routine. The hospital became her sanctuary, a place where her worth wasn't measured by her womb, but by her compassion. She treated every patient like family, staying late, coming in early, learning names and stories. It was during one of those extended shifts when she first saw him. He sat alone in the waiting area, dressed in plain clothes, his posture impossibly straight. No phone in his hand, no impatience in his eyes, just presence. When their eyes met, he smiled, warm, genuine, disarming. "Excuse me, nurse, could you help me find the pediatric ward?" His voice was calm, authoritative, yet gentle. What started as directions became conversation. He visited the hospital frequently, sometimes for checkups, he claimed, other times just appearing in the cafeteria when she took her breaks. He never mentioned what he did for work, never boasted, never tried to impress. "I travel a lot," was all he'd say, changing the subject to ask about her day. Sarah found herself looking forward to these encounters. For the first time in years, someone listened when she spoke. Someone saw her. Not her failures, not her empty womb, just her. The cafeteria conversations turned into evening walks. Walks became phone calls that stretched past midnight. He made her laugh again, made her believe she deserved kindness. 6 months later, when he quietly asked her to marry him in that same hospital corridor, Sarah said yes. No big wedding, no social media announcements, just 2 souls at City Hall, and a promise whispered between them. She had no idea she'd just married one of the most powerful men in the country. But her past wasn't done with her yet. She was 3 months pregnant when she realized her husband still left for work before dawn and returned after dark, but never once told her where he actually went. Sarah stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her hand resting on the small curve of her belly. Pregnant. The word felt like a miracle and a mystery wrapped together. The same body that Daniel's family had called broken was now nurturing life. Her husband, Marcus, she learned his full name only at the courthouse, had held her that night and whispered, "You were never the problem, Sarah. Never." But Marcus was an enigma wrapped in gentleness. He disappeared for days sometimes, always apologizing, always returning with that same quiet intensity. She never asked too many questions. After years of being interrogated about her worthiness, she respected his privacy. When she told him about the pregnancy, something shifted in his eyes, a fierce protectiveness she'd never seen before. "You'll keep working?" he asked carefully. "I love nursing. Taking care of people gives me purpose." He nodded, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Then keep doing what you love, but promise me you'll be careful." Meanwhile, across town, Daniel was living his best life, or so his social media showed. His new girlfriend, Veronica, was everything Sarah wasn't. Loud, flashy, always camera-ready. Their photos flooded the internet. Club nights, expensive restaurants, weekend getaways. "Living my best life with my queen," his captions screamed. The same company Sarah had helped him get into had promoted him twice. The same apartment she'd helped furnish now showcased Veronica's expensive taste. Daniel had erased Sarah from his story completely, rewriting history as if she'd never existed. His friends commented, "You deserve this, bro." If only they knew what was coming. Sarah tried not to look at his posts, but sometimes late at night, curiosity won. She'd scroll through his perfect life and feel nothing. No jealousy, no regret, just a distant sadness for the man she'd once loved who'd never really seen her. She had no idea that in 1 week, their paths would collide in the most humiliating way possible. The doctor had told her to walk more in her 3rd trimester. She never imagined that advice would lead to the worst humiliation of her life. Tuesday afternoon. Sarah's shift at the hospital ended at 4 p.m., and instead of calling Marcus's driver, he'd insisted she have one, she decided to walk. The pregnancy made her feel sluggish, and the fresh air helped clear her mind. She wore her nurse's uniform still, too tired to change, her belly now prominently showing at 6 months. The route home took her through the commercial district, past shops and cafes where people lived their ordinary lives. She was lost in thought, one hand protectively on her stomach when she heard it. The aggressive revving of an engine, the screech of tires taking a corner too fast. Sarah looked up just in time to see the silver luxury sedan speeding toward her. Time seemed to slow as recognition hit her like a physical blow. Daniel. Behind the wheel, his head thrown back in laughter, and beside him, Veronica, her hand on his thigh, both of them looking directly at Sarah. Their eyes met for one terrible frozen second. Sarah saw the recognition flash across Daniel's face, then something darker, something cruel. His smile widened into something ugly, malicious. Instead of slowing down, he accelerated. The car hit the massive puddle directly in front of Sarah with deliberate precision. Muddy water exploded upward like a brown tidal wave, drenching her from head to toe. The force of it nearly knocked her off her feet. She stumbled, her hand instinctively protecting her belly. But they weren't finished. The car screeched to a halt. The passenger window rolled down, and Veronica's mocking laughter pierced the air. "Oh my God, is that your barren ex-wife?" Veronica shrieked with delight. Daniel leaned over, his face twisted with contempt. "Guess somebody was desperate enough. Looking real classy there, Sarah." Then, Veronica lifted a fast food bag and deliberately dumped its contents, greasy wrappers, half-eaten fries, a drink cup, onto Sarah's head. The liquid ran down her face, mixing with the mud and her tears. They sped off, their laughter echoing down the street. Sarah stood there, trembling, soaked, humiliated, her pregnant body covered in filth. Pedestrians stared, but no one approached. What Daniel didn't know was that someone from the hospital had witnessed everything and knew exactly who Sarah's husband really was. Jennifer had worked with Sarah for 8 months, but Sarah! Jennifer, the senior nurse from pediatrics, had been driving home when she witnessed the entire scene. She slammed on her brakes, her heart pounding with rage and disbelief. She jumped out of her car and ran to Sarah, who stood frozen in shock, trembling, one hand still protectively cradling her belly. Mud dripped from her hair, trash clung to her uniform, but it was the look in Sarah's eyes, hollow, defeated, deeply humiliated, that made Jennifer's blood boil. "Get in the car, now!" Jennifer commanded gently, wrapping her jacket around Sarah's shoulders. Sarah moved mechanically, saying nothing as Jennifer helped her into the passenger seat. The drive was tense and silent, except for Sarah's quiet sniffling. "Who was that?" Jennifer asked. "Nobody," Sarah whispered. "Just nobody." Jennifer glanced at her colleague, this woman who showed up early every day, who treated every patient with extraordinary tenderness, who never complained despite being 6 months pregnant and working full shifts. "That wasn't nobody, Sarah. That was deliberate. That was cruel." When they pulled up to Sarah's home, Jennifer's eyes widened slightly. The house was modest, but the security was unusual. Subtle cameras, reinforced gates, a level of protection that didn't match the neighborhood's aesthetic. Before Sarah could open the door, it swung wide. Marcus stood in the doorway, having arrived home early to surprise his wife. His smile vanished the instant he saw her. "Sarah?" His voice was dangerously quiet. He moved with frightening speed, catching her as her knees buckled. His hands, always so gentle with her, trembled with barely contained fury as he took in every detail, the mud caking her hair, the trash stuck to her clothes, the stinking water soaking through to her skin, the way she protectively held their unborn child. What happened? It wasn't a question. Sarah opened her mouth to lie, to protect, to minimize old habits from her first marriage. But Jennifer stepped forward. "Sir, I witnessed the entire incident. A man in a silver sedan deliberately splashed mud on your wife, stopped his vehicle, verbally humiliated her, and his passenger threw garbage on her. She's 6 months pregnant, and they knew it. This wasn't an accident. It was assault." Marcus's jaw clenched so tightly Jennifer could hear his teeth grind. When he looked up, his eyes had transformed into something cold, calculated, and absolutely terrifying. For the first time, Jennifer understood exactly who Sarah had married, and she pitied whoever had done this. Daniel's nightmare was about to begin. Marcus made one phone call, just one. Within 12 minutes, Daniel's world began to collapse. Inside the house, Marcus guided Sarah to the bathroom with trembling hands, his voice impossibly soft. "Take a warm shower, love. I'll handle everything." But the moment the bathroom door closed, his entire demeanor shifted. He pulled out his phone, not the regular one Sarah had seen, but a second device from a locked drawer. Jennifer stood awkwardly in the living room, suddenly aware she'd stepped into something far beyond a domestic dispute. Marcus's voice dropped to a tone that made the air feel thinner. "This is Major General Marcus Hayes, authorization code Sierra 79er Delta. I need immediate deployment of a tactical unit to my residence. Target acquisition and retrieval, civilian assault on a military spouse. Jennifer's breath caught. Major General. He rattled off details with clinical precision: vehicle make, model, approximate location, timeline. Then he made a second call. Pulled traffic camera footage from Commerce Street, 4:47 p.m. I want the license plate, registered owner, current location, and full background within 10 minutes. He wasn't asking, he was commanding. Across town, Daniel and Veronica were still laughing, reliving their hilarious encounter as they pulled into an upscale lounge for happy hour. Did you see her face? All pregnant and pathetic. Who even got her pregnant? Daniel grinned, flagging down the valet. Man, that felt good. She had that coming for years. The valet never took his keys. Instead, 3 black vehicles surrounded Daniel's car with military precision. Men in tactical gear emerged. Not police, something else entirely. Their movements were coordinated, professional, absolutely terrifying. Major General Hayes. Daniel's smile froze. What? Who's asking? He never finished the sentence. Hands yanked him from the vehicle. Veronica screamed as she was pulled out the passenger side. You're under arrest for assault on a military spouse and family member. You have the right to... Military spouse? What are you talking about? Daniel's voice cracked with panic. No one answered. Within seconds, both were restrained, but before they were loaded into separate vehicles, the soldiers delivered something else, something Marcus had specifically ordered. Justice with a personal touch. The beating wasn't long, just enough. Controlled strikes that left maximum pain with calculated precision. Daniel's designer shirt tore. Blood streamed from his nose. Veronica's screams echoed through the parking lot as crowds gathered, phones out, recording everything. By the time they were thrown into the vehicles, faces swollen, bodies aching, completely disoriented, Daniel still didn't understand what he'd done. But he was about to learn exactly who he'd humiliated, and the punishment had only just begun. Daniel thought he was being taken to a police station until the vehicle pulled into a military compound with armed guards and barbed wire fences. The hood over Daniel's head was ripped off, and fluorescent lights burned his eyes. His face throbbed, his ribs screamed with every breath. Beside him, Veronica whimpered, her makeup streaked with tears and blood. They were in a stark interrogation room, concrete walls, metal table, no windows. A single door with a lock that sounded like a vault when it closed. "Where are we?" Veronica sobbed. "I want a lawyer. You can't just..." The door opened. Marcus entered, now in full military uniform. The transformation was staggering. Gone was the gentle man who'd courted Sarah with patience and kindness. In his place stood a decorated Major General, ribbons covering his chest, stars on his shoulders, authority radiating from every inch of his frame. Daniel's blood turned to ice. "Do you know who I am?" Marcus asked quietly, pulling out a chair but not sitting. Daniel's mouth opened, closed. His mind raced, trying to connect dots that weren't making sense. Marcus placed a tablet on the table. With one tap, traffic camera footage began playing. Daniel watched himself speed through the puddle, watched the water explode over a pregnant woman, watched Veronica dump trash on her head, watched them drive away, laughing. "That woman," Marcus said, his voice like gravel, "is my wife. The child she's carrying is my child. And you," he leaned forward, his eyes burning into Daniel's soul, "you deliberately assaulted her." The color drained from Daniel's face. Wait, Sarah?" His voice cracked. "That was... No, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she was..." "Married to me?" Marcus finished, coldly. "Does it matter? Would it have been acceptable if she'd married a mechanic, a teacher, anyone?" Veronica found her voice, desperation making her bold.
It was a joke, just a stupid joke. We didn't mean—" "You threw garbage on a pregnant woman and laughed." Marcus' voice rose for the first time, making both of them flinch. "You humiliated her in public, endangered my child. That's not a joke, that's assault." Daniel's hands shook. Everything was crashing down. His smug satisfaction, his perfect life, his feeling of superiority over Sarah. Please, I'm sorry. I'll apologize. Marcus straightened, his decision already made. "You'll do more than apologize. You're gonna learn what happens when you treat human beings, especially women, like trash." He turned to the guards at the door. "Release her," he said, nodding toward Veronica. "She's learned enough. But him?" His eyes locked onto Daniel with absolute zero mercy. "He stays indefinitely." Veronica was escorted out, limping, sobbing, free but broken. Daniel remained, staring at the closing door with dawning horror. His real punishment was about to begin.
Day 1 in the military compound. Daniel thought hard labor meant a few hours of exercise. By hour 3, he was begging for mercy that wouldn't come. 5 a.m. A whistle blasted through Daniel's cell, a concrete box with a thin mattress in a single bucket. He'd barely slept, his body still aching from the beating, his mind spinning with disbelief. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be legal. "On your feet, Morrison." A drill sergeant, built like a tank, face carved from stone, stood in the doorway. "Welcome to your new reality. You wanted to treat people like garbage? Let's see how you handle being treated like a recruit who can't follow orders." Daniel stumbled to his feet. "I have rights. I want to call—" "You have the right to shut up and move, now." The courtyard was massive. Obstacle courses, training equipment, other soldiers running drills in perfect formation. Daniel was handed a uniform, 2 sizes too small, and boots that pinched. No food, no water, just orders. 50 push-ups. Go! Daniel dropped to the ground. His arms shook. By 20, he collapsed. "Again, from the beginning, and every time you fail, you start over." The days blurred into a nightmare of punishment drills, carrying sandbags in the scorching sun, crawling through mud under barbed wire, running laps until his lungs burned and his legs gave out. Each time he failed a task, which was often, he started over. No food until completion, no water until the drill sergeant decided he'd earned it. His hands blistered and bled. His designer body, maintained by gym selfies and protein shakes, crumbled under real physical demands. At night, he lay on the concrete floor, every muscle screaming, stomach hollow with hunger, and wept. Meanwhile, Veronica limped to Daniel's apartment, her face still swollen, her body covered in bruises. She looked around at the expensive furniture, the TV he just bought, the closet full of clothes that suddenly meant nothing. She made a decision that night. By morning, she'd contacted a buyer for Daniel's car, the silver sedan that had started this nightmare. Sold it cash, no questions asked. Then she systematically emptied the apartment, electronics, jewelry, watches, anything valuable. Daniel's phone, left behind in the chaos, buzzed continuously with calls from his job. "Where is he? Morrison missed 3 days straight. We're hiring someone else." Back at the compound, Daniel finally broke on day 7. Collapsed during morning drills, he lay in the dirt, sobbing. Please, I'm sorry. The drill sergeant stood over him, unmoved. "You sorry because you learned something, or sorry because you got caught?" Daniel had no answer. That evening, Sarah visited Marcus at his office, her belly now noticeably larger. "Marcus, I know what he did was horrible, but this has to stop, please." Marcus looked at his wife, his beautiful, forgiving wife, and felt his resolve waver for the first time. But Daniel's nightmare had one more chapter left. When Marcus finally agreed to release Daniel, it wasn't mercy, it was knowing that freedom would be the cruelest punishment of all.
Sarah's pleading eyes finally broke through Marcus's armor. He'd never been able to deny her anything, even when every instinct screamed for more justice. "One more day," he'd told her. "Then I'll release him." That night, he visited Daniel's cell personally. Daniel sat huddled in the corner, unrecognizable, his face gaunt, his expensive haircut now matted with sweat and dirt, his eyes hollow. 10 days had aged him 10 years. "You are being released tomorrow," Marcus said flatly. Daniel's head snapped up, hope flickering in his broken expression. "Thank you. Thank God. Don't thank me. Thank my wife. The woman you humiliated is the only reason you're leaving." Marcus crouched down, forcing Daniel to meet his eyes. "You will never contact her. You will never speak her name. You will never come within 100 feet of her. If you do, what you experienced here will seem like a vacation. Understood?" Daniel nodded frantically, tears streaming down his face. "And Morrison, maybe learn to treat women, treat people like they matter before someone teaches you a lesson I won't stop." The next morning, Daniel was dumped at a hospital entrance, his body battered, dehydrated, malnourished. The medical staff rushed him in. IVs, examinations, concerned whispers. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, possible cracked ribs. He spent 3 weeks recovering in that hospital bed, the irony not lost on him that Sarah had once worked in a place just like this, caring for people with the compassion he'd never shown her. When he was finally discharged, reality hit like a sledgehammer. He took a taxi to his apartment, using the last cash in his wallet. The driver helped him to the door because Daniel could barely walk. His keys still worked, but when the door swung open, empty. Completely, devastatingly empty. The furniture gone, the TV gone, his clothes, his electronics, his watches, everything he'd worked for, everything he'd posted about on social media to prove his success, vanished. He stumbled through the hollow rooms, his breathing quickening into panic. He tried Veronica's number. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Then came the final blow. Daniel dragged himself to his workplace the next day, desperate, needing something, anything to be normal. He pushed through the glass doors of the corporate office where Sarah had once secured him a position. The receptionist looked up, confused. "Can I help you?" "I work here. Daniel Morrison. I've been sick. I need to speak to—" "Morrison?" She checked her computer. "Sir, there's no one by that name in our employee directory." His world tilted. "What? No, I've worked here for years. His former supervisor walked by, stopped, looked uncomfortable. "Daniel? We tried calling. You disappeared for over a week. No call, no show. We had to fill your position. I'm sorry, but—" Daniel's legs buckled. He collapsed right there in the lobby, his body giving out, his mind fracturing under the weight of total, complete loss. Everything he'd built on Sarah's sacrifice, destroyed, and she'd never lifted a finger against him. They found Daniel on the hospital floor again, but this time, no one was coming to save him, not even himself. Daniel woke in the same emergency room where he'd been treated weeks before. Different bed, same despair. The doctors stabilized him. Exhaustion, malnutrition relapse, psychological breakdown, but they couldn't fix what was truly broken. When he was discharged 3 days later, he had nowhere to go. His landlord had already re-rented the apartment. His bank account, drained by medical bills and missed rent, showed double digits. His phone buzzed with collection notices and angry messages from friends wondering where he'd disappeared to. Veronica? She'd boarded a plane using money from selling his entire life. New country, new identity, new victims probably. His family, the same ones who'd pressured him to divorce Sarah, offered empty condolences, but no real help. "You need to get yourself together, Daniel. We can't keep bailing you out." The irony burned. Sarah had given everything to build him up. They'd torn her down for not producing a child. Now she was pregnant, married, protected, and thriving. And Daniel was homeless. 3 months later, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Marcus was there for every moment, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, crying when their daughter took her first breath. The hospital staff, Sarah's colleagues, celebrated like family. Jennifer brought balloons. The other nurses pooled together for gifts. Sarah had built something Daniel never understood, a community based on genuine care, not transactions. She never asked about Daniel, never gloated, never even spoke his name. But she heard things, through whispers, through the inevitable small world connections. Daniel was living in a shelter, doing odd jobs. His social media, once flooded with flex posts and fake happiness, now deleted entirely. His friends had moved on. His girlfriend had vanished. His career gone. One evening, as Sarah nursed her daughter in the quiet of their home, Marcus sat beside her. "Do you regret asking me to release him?" he asked softly. Sarah looked down at her baby girl, the child doctors said she'd never have, the miracle that came after her darkest season. "No," she said finally. "He needed to learn, but I refuse to become bitter. That's not who I am." A year later, Sarah was promoted to head nurse. She still wore her wedding ring quietly, never discussing her husband's rank. Marcus attended every school play, every parent event for their daughter, dressed in civilian clothes, just another dad. Daniel? He eventually found work at a warehouse. No recognition, no social media presence, no girlfriend, just existence, a shadow of the man who'd once thrown trash on a pregnant woman and laughed. He never contacted Sarah, never apologized publicly, but late at night, alone in his rented room, he understood with crushing clarity what he'd lost. Not just a wife, not just stability. He'd lost a woman who'd loved him unconditionally, who'd sacrificed her dreams for his success, who'd never asked for basic human dignity. And when he'd had the chance to show her simple kindness, even after everything, he'd chosen cruelty instead. Some lessons cost everything to learn. Subscribe for more stories about karma, justice, and the power of resilience. Comment below, do you think Daniel got what he deserved, or did the punishment go too far? Hit that like button if you believe in treating people with dignity. You never know who they might become.
And that's how Daniel learned the hardest lesson of his life: never judge someone by their season of struggle. Sarah lost everything, her marriage, her dignity, years of her life, but she refused to become bitter. She chose healing. She chose growth, and life rewarded her with everything she deserved. Daniel, he chose cruelty when he could have chosen silence. He chose humiliation when he could have driven past, and he paid the ultimate price. Here's my question for you. Was Marcus's punishment justified, or did he go too far? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, treat people with dignity. You never know who they'll become or who's protecting them. See you in the next one.